It's finally draft week, which is good news for everyone, Rube. It's good news for the people who don't like the pre-draft process because it's almost over, but it's also good news for people who really enjoy it because it's going to kick into high gear the next few days.
Yeah, and I think pretty much every football fan loves the actual draft. Those 3 days are, you get to see the future of your franchise. You get to see the future, and you learn what because they can say all they want about this position, this player, that player, but when they start drafting, you can't hide from what they really think. So it's a real window into the front office, and it's all about to start in a couple of days.
You feeling a little pre-draft fatigue?
A little bit. It starts about middle of February. It's been a long process, but it's all good. It's a fun time of year.
It is fun. We have a lot to get to. This is our final show before the first round kicks off on Thursday. So we're going to have our own draft and go through some real possible scenarios for the Eagles. And we'll try to pinpoint which players we think are most likely to end up in Philadelphia. We'll look at some options for round two of the draft. The Eagles have picks 50 and 53. And then at the end, we'll look at Howie Roseman's draft history, especially in the first round, kind of a mixed bag. But we have some news, Rube.
We do. And we have some news that we've been waiting for.
We do. And it's also news that comes from the NFL and not from the Eagles, because if it came from the Eagles, we would get it after we recorded this podcast. So thank you to our good buddy, Roger Goodell, for making sure we found out that Isaiah Rodgers has been reinstated. Full go. He can come back to the team facility right now if he wants to. And we all expected this to happen, but it took a little longer than expected.
Yeah, and when the NFL reinstated 5 guys late last week, we all kind of started wondering what's going on. Why isn't Isaiah in that group? Maybe they just forgot about him. But it's certainly good news. And Jeff Lurie said at the owners' meetings he wouldn't have said that if he wasn't pretty confident about it, that he anticipated him being back. But Eagles have cornerback, and I wouldn't get too carried away with Isaiah Rodgers. He's a nice player, and we'll see. Get him into camp and see how he looks. He's an outside corner. He was, he made some plays with the Colts. He really what he did is, he placed bets for family members and friends. Does the punishment fit the crime? To me, no. The league's biggest advertisers are betting houses, and it's so ingrained in the NFL's culture now. It seems a little hypocritical to suspend somebody for a year, a young kid who is just trying to place some bets that are legal if you're not an NFL player. He did something wrong. He paid the price. I'm really looking forward to seeing him. And, I think the corollary to getting him is what happens with James Bradbury, is to change his status, and we'll see about that.
Yeah, I don't know if they necessarily are hand in hand, but it's nice to also have this information before the draft. And I know it doesn't necessarily change. Like, I don't think having Isaiah Rodgers should stop them from drafting a cornerback in the first round if that's the way things fall. Like that, it shouldn't prevent that. It shouldn't, like, nothing about Isaiah Rodgers should do that. But maybe in day 3, they're less likely to go that way if they think they have a flyer on a kid who's been relatively successful in his career.
Yeah, that's true. And you also don't know how much. Look, they're getting him back in April, so he's got all the off-season programs, and he's got plenty of time. But you don't know how a year off is going to affect anybody. And it wasn't just a year off. It's not like he was rehabbing an injury and he was in meetings and he was in the building. He wasn't anywhere near the NovaCare complex. He wasn't allowed in the building for a year, since they signed him after last season ended. So he hasn't had that structure. Now he's posted some videos of him working out. He looks great, but who knows? There's a lot of unknowns with a guy who hasn't played since 2022 season. So certainly having him and getting this over with is better than not having him. We'll see. I don't think it's a lock that he's going to be a big time contributor, but I think he has a chance.
I'm excited to watch him. I'm excited to see how he looks in OTAs and at training camp. I'm excited to talk to him too, because it had to be such a weird year for him. And all those workouts, he's like working out with Eagles gear that I guess he bought.
Right.
that has to be a weird feeling because you're a part of a team, but you're not. Like, you haven't even been able to be in the building with your teammates yet, but I guess you kind of feel invested in the success or the failure of a team that you're not even really a part of.
Yeah, and he made it clear that he really appreciated the Eagles, doing that, signing him when they did. It gave him that, I guess, that a team to identify. We gave him something to kind of focus on. Look, I'm an Eagle. I'm getting ready for the Eagle season. And look, they're not taking a big risk because he's not guaranteed money, but or if he is, it's very little. But I think it probably gave him a little structure and a little kind of made it real that he was getting ready for the NFL because he had a team. I wonder if the Eagles are allowed to send him gear, though. I mean, is there anything in the rules that, like, he can't be in the building, but can the building send him stuff?
I don't know about that. I think that would be not worth, like, the juice wouldn't be worth the squeeze there.
Well, if it's legal, no.
Start writing some plays on the inside of a helmet.
I mean, all the rule was he couldn't have contact with the coaches. Imagine if it came down to the league, like, inspecting the packaging to see, Anyway, we're a little off the rails, but it's good to have him here. And yeah, I'm with you. I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, we'll see how he fits in. Primarily an outside corner during his time in Indy, but also has the frame. He's a sub 6 foot guy. Like, he looks like a nickel corner. So, like, I don't know where he fits. I think he might offer some inside outside versatility, and like, he, in a way, like Zach McPherson offers that too. So curious to see, like, the pecking order when they start rolling out in team drills in the summer. Like, where is he? Because I think there's like a high variance for Isaiah Rodgers. Like, he could be a starter or off the team.
I agree with that. And there's a lot of unknowns with a guy who, look, it's a new team. He's been off a year. Yeah, you're right. Starter, I guess he could be a starter. It's possible. At least he started some games in Indy. Yeah, anything's possible. That makes it fun.
Yeah, I don't think that's like the likely outcome, but it's not completely out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Are you still? What do you think happens with Bradbury? You think they go into the season with him?
I still lean no, but I think the draft could change that. I
Yeah.
mean, if you draft a corner in the first round, you're playing that guy.
Yeah.
And then I don't think James Bradbury is someone you want as a backup.
No, he's not going to play special teams. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I would agree with that. If they draft a corner in the first round, and that could be what they're waiting for, draft a corner in the first round, like, what are you going to do with all these corners? And he can't play. And I think I guess there's a chance he could come back. I know his whole career's been up and down, but he's never been 30 before, coming off a season like he had last year. I find it hard to imagine he could bounce back from that season.
I do too, but if you're the Eagles, maybe you're looking at it like, well, we kind of screwed ourselves with this contract anyway. We might as well try to get the most out of him. So, like, if you're looking at it from their perspective and they say, all right, well, we didn't draft a corner in the first round. We still have James Bradbury. Let's just bring everyone to camp and see what it looks like.
Yeah, and you could ease some of the financial obligation, the cap obligation, if you do that. But you can also end up in a situation where maybe you lose a game because of that, and now you're switching to Isaiah Rodgers or Keely Ringo, whoever it is, week 3, week 4, and you're making all these changes. I don't think there's an easy answer, I guess, to the whole situation. I don't think anybody expected him to drop off the cliff like he did.
Yeah, let me kind of reel us back in here a little bit. Isaiah Rodgers, I think he can also help with these new kick return rules.
Yeah.
I think he could be a weapon there. The Eagles kick returner from the last couple years,
I like that.
Boston Scott, is still a free agent. And even with the new rules, I don't know exactly what the Eagles strategy is going to be, but Rodgers is fast. I mean, he ran a super fast time at his 40, and it was 2020, so it wasn't combine time. It was like private virtual workout, but he's fast. I mean, he certainly has wheels, and I'd like to see him get a shot to at least show he can do that.
Yeah, I mean, assuming he's on a roster, they're going to try to find ways to use him. There's no question about it. I think nobody really knows exactly how it's going to look. with the new rules. It's so different. So something we're going to see. I would think we'll see a lot of experimenting with that in camp. It's going to be fun to watch them work on that.
You say experimenting or
Yeah,
experimenting?
experimenting.
I think I say experimenting. Huh. That's all.
We pronounce a lot of words differently. Yeah,
We do. And I think some of yours are like I hear like a little New York, like you say stand online, which I think is like a New York thing.
okay. I mean, I haven't lived in New York since I was 15. So
Yeah, but those are formative years. That's when
I hate Knicks fans.
well, let's not get into that. But
You know
that
what's
kind of
weird? You know,
builds your dialect, you know?
like when I was a teenager, I would go to Knicks games. I was thinking about that last night watching the game, and like I was like devastated after that game. I was like, man, if it was like when I was like 15, 16, I would have been so happy that they won that game. Like living in a different city just changes everything about your approach to everything.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me.
And
But anyway,
certainly words and phrases.
yeah. Yeah, my dad was from Maine, so he had like all the, you know, I mean, we would say wicked good around the house,
You should just bring that one back. Try
wicked
to
good.
slip it in here and there.
This is a wicked good podcast so far.
I like that. All right, let's move on from Isaiah Rodgers. This is the final time we'll get to talk to everyone before the first round. The Eagles are sitting there at 22. I don't know if either of us believe they're going to stick and pick and make a selection at 22. That's not really the way Howie Roseman operates, but he has drafted in his spot before.
3 times.
Yeah, so it's certainly a possibility. I think you and I both are in agreement that the more likely scenario is a trade up, right? Especially because I already have 2 second-round picks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
think trade down. I think it's possible. I think I put it at 55% trade up. What did I say? 25% trade down and 20% stay 22.
okay. Yeah, I think that's about right. Certainly, I think trade up is the most likely scenario. And we figured we'd kind of talk about these prospects in a little different way today. And we can be competitive about this. Nick Sirianni will like it. Uh, we're going to do our own draft. And we're basically drafting players back and forth uh, with the idea of like the most likely player to end up with the Eagles. And that can be from however they get there. So like you have to factor in the behind the scenes math here. It can be, yeah, they trade up for this guy or they pick him at 22 or they trade back. Just players we think have a shot to end up with the Eagles. I'll let you go first.
Oh,
I'll
I
let
was
you go
wondering
first.
about that. I'll take JC Latham first.
Okay.
I just think, and I think a corner still really likely, but I just think moving up a few spots, he's a guy who could come right in and play right guard from day one, and eventually become a right tackle. You're starting right tackle whenever Lane Johnson does retire. So he's my most likely guy. I still think there's a good chance it's a corner, but I'm going to go Latham.
Yeah, and he was at the top of my board too. I think a trade up is in play with him. I think maybe there's an outside shot. He lasts to 22, but I think it's more likely they have to move up and get him. He's just massive, can play guard, eventual successor for Lane. I feel like the floor is pretty high with him too. Where some of these guys that you're looking at a high ceiling, but the floor is lower because of that.
Yeah.
I don't see that with him. Yeah, I think that is the most likely. I'll give you my first pick here, and it's Cooper DeJean. If they stick and pick at 22, I think DeJean's the guy.
Who's my
Uh,
number 2 guy?
yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll be honest, he would not be the guy I stick and pick there. We'll get into him in a little bit. I don't want to tip my hand, but there's
Why?
it's competitive advantage. I've spent too much time with Nick Sirianni, and I'm not going to tip my hand here. This is all proprietary. So you have JC Latham. I have Cooper DeJean.
Well, I'm going to go corner with my next one. And Cooper DeJean was second on my list behind Latham. I got to go corner here. I think I'm going to go Terrion Arnold with a trade up. I'm going to go trade up again. I'm tempted to go Nate Wiggins there, which would be more of a stick and pick at 22. But I'm going to go Terry and Arnold. I think obviously they'd have to move up, but I think they really like that kid. I think he's very good. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, I think you have there's 4 players to me that make sense in a trade up. You have 2 of them.
Right.
And that scared me a little bit because I already said the most likely scenarios for them to trade up. So I'm going to get another trade up candidate here. I'm going to say Troy Fatanu from Washington. And it's funny because you have Latham, who's just like this monster. He's 6'8", 340. Fatanu's much smaller than that, but Jeff Stoutland is always looking for players with elite traits, and he has that. He just moves in a different way. Uh, I think he might be better suited at guard in the NFL, but I wouldn't think he can't play tackle. He's played tackle in college, so I think that is a really good pick. But I think it's a pick they'd have to move up to make as well.
Yeah. Well, my next guy, and I'm going to, this is if they stay at 22, I think Nate Wiggins makes sense. I think they like him. I think he's a guy that there's some questions certainly about. We know how good he is as a cover corner. He's sticky. He's tall and long and fast. I mean, he's got all the traits you're looking for as a cover corner. But then there's that side of his game where he just isn't going to give you anything against the run. Now, maybe they feel like they can work with him on that. Generally, that doesn't happen. It's not something he's not built for it. He wasn't asked to do it, but he's so good. He's so good in coverage that you're getting a really good cornerback. And you find 10 other guys who can stop the run and go out there and put them on. The other team's best receiver. So I get the knock on him, and I understand it. Teams want complete players these days, especially if you're in the middle of the first round. So I think they like Wiggins a lot, and I think he's going to be a really interesting player because look, Bobby Taylor didn't. You look back at some of the Eagles corners. Lito Shepherd wasn't stopping the run, but nobody remembers what they did against the run. Some Eagles corners have. Sheldon Brown, Troy Vincent was as good as anybody. Eric Allen. These are all-time greats. But I'm going to go Nate Wiggins there with my third pick.
Yeah, to me, the thing with Wiggins, I'm not worried about him against the run. I'm a little more worried about him just getting beat in bully ball, right? Like an AJ Brown size receiver just bullying him at the catch point.
Well, there's not many AJ Browns, and you won't have to cover AJ Brown except in practice.
Well, there are though.
Oh, that's good. No, I hear what you're saying. But it was certainly he's more physical than, he's as physical as you'd want from a guy with his frame.
Sure.
He's just not built that way.
Yeah, he makes up for a lot of the frame stuff, but it's still there for me.
Yeah.
And it still gives me pause.
Yeah.
Speaking of frame, I'm going to take a big boy here, Amarius Mims from Georgia. And I know this is a projection, but at some point, somebody's going to take him because the tape is so good and he's so encouraging. Like, he might have the highest ceiling of all the tackles in this draft. And the thought of putting him in a room with Jeff Stoutland for the next 4 or 5 years is almost enough to just do it if he's there at 22. So I'm going Mims here.
And it's funny because people say, well, he only started 8 games in college. Well, Jordan Milana didn't even start 1 game in high school. So I think if you didn't have Stout, I don't know if you'd be as comfortable with that pick. But you have a guy who specializes in players like Amarius Mims. Mm-hmm. That's what Stout lives for. He lives for raw tools and projects and molding them into elite players or even just good players, productive players. So he's an intriguing guy, and ceiling's high and the floor is low. But with Stout on your side, you kind of feel pretty confident with that pick.
Yeah. All right, you're up.
I am up, and I think I'm going to go edge here. I'm going to go with one of the edges. I'll go with Chop.
Oh, interesting.
I'm going to go Chop. Um, I think there's certainly reason to take an edge, and I like the player, and I'm. I think you probably. I think he'll probably go a little after 22. You probably get out of 22.
Yeah,
If
I
I
think he's
see
a trade down
my
possibility.
trade down guy, a handful of picks, get something back. Um, you know, little. I wonder if Howie's a little gun shy. His last, he doesn't do real well with edge rushers in the first round. But I think the player's solid. I don't think it. I mean, I think it's a fairly safe pick, even for Howie. Um, and yeah, we'll see. I like the fact that he. I mean, he level of competition was high. He faced really good players in practice. I just think he's a solid guy, and it's an interesting position because they have. I mean, they're going to lose BG. Derek Barnett's gone. It's kind of a position in flux. We don't really know about Nolan Smith. Um, I'm sure there'll be a lot of criticism if they do take an edge in the first round because everyone's going to see that as a commentary on Nolan Smith and what they think of him, and it would be. I mean, let's be honest. Um, have they given up on him yet? No, but certainly with that shoulder and with the lack of production, even the lack of playing time, um, they have to be wondering. Also, you have Sweat is only signed for one more year. You got Bryce Huff, a guy who's had one good season. So I don't really know what they have there. I don't know, but I know a young guy like Chop could help.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Chop. I think there are things to like. I think he's a little bit of a projection, which like sometimes you hit it down the fairway, right? Like this might be a spot if you're looking for edge help to just do that. Like a guy like Latu might make more sense if they're okay on his medicals, which I don't know if they are. Like
Yeah.
that makes him a tricky evaluation. But yeah, I think if
He's on
you're
my
if
list too. I don't think. I mean, you're not going to be able to trade down for him. I don't think. Maybe.
I doubt it.
He's an interesting guy because I could see him sliding. There's always that one guy. Like, why is Latu sliding? Well,
Mhm.
he medically retired from football when he was, in Washington. So he's been healthy at UCLA, and I think Landon Dickerson tells you how the Eagles feel about guys with injury tags. They'll take advantage of them sliding. So that's certainly a possibility. He's on my list, but
It depends though.
yeah, everyone's different, sure,
Yeah. I mean DK
but
Metcalf was off their board completely.
that's true. That's true. Um, but they got another elite wide receiver in that spot. um, but yeah, I'm going Chop there. I like Chop.
That's fine. Yeah, my turn, right?
Yeah,
Earlier, I hinted at a pick and stick at 22 at cornerback who's not Nate Wiggins, and some people are going to say this is too high for him. Give me Kool Aid.
you're going Kool Aid. I know you're going because
Give me.
he's my next guy.
I like Kool Aid, man. I'd be it in a vacuum, no problem taking him at 22, and I know that will be underwhelming for a lot of people. I like him more than Cooper DeJean.
Yeah,
And I know that everyone looks at DeJean and they like the versatility, but I don't know. I want a guy who's played corner in the SEC for a few seasons and came into this year as the best cornerback and like did nothing to change that other than the guy on the other side of him playing really well. Now the Jones fracture is a little concerning. He ran a sub 4.5 with it.
which is crazy. And what do you run a 4.47 with a broken toe?
Yeah, with the Jones fracture in his foot. So like he answered a lot of questions there about just the pure speed,
I mean,
but
he's faster with a broken foot than Bradbury. Totally healthy.
yeah. So I mean, look. So I think he'll be healthy for training camp. Now, are you worried about the Jones fracture long term? Maybe that's the reason for him to slide. But I like Kool Aid. Maybe his ceiling's not as high as those top two corners in this draft. But man, and corner is a position where it's really hit or miss. But you look back in 5 years, I'd be pretty surprised if Kool Aid's not at least a starter in the league.
Yeah, I like the pick. He was my next guy. Are we doing another one? Are we done?
Well, we've only done 4. You
Okay.
do 5 each.
Sure. I'm gonna go Jared Verse here.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Jared Verse. He you hear about guys climbing, and everyone's bored, and you never know if that's accurate. He might be out of range. He might be a guy they can trade up for. Um, but while we're talking edges, I think he's a pretty good one. And um, again, I don't think it's likely it'll be an edge, but if it is, there's only a couple guys it can be. So I'll throw him in there.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Like I think Dallas Turner is going to be gone way before the Eagles pick, but if he's someone who starts to slip into the teens,
Yeah,
and if there's like a big swing trade up, I could see Dallas Turner being that guy.
yeah,
All right, my last pick.
yeah.
Give me the last of the 4 players I think are realistic trade ups, and this would take the board falling in a different way than most people have it. But give me Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. Uh, you rolled your eyes there a little bit.
Well, how high are you willing to go for him?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's a good chance we see 4 quarterbacks in the top 10, so like that's going to push good players down. There's a decent chance Terrion Arnold becomes the first
There's a
corner
chance.
taken. So like you have Terrion Arnold on your list. I can have Quinion Mitchell on my
Oh,
list.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, it's fine. I think it's more likely Mitchell's the first corner taken.
yeah, and that's why you took Terrion with your second pick, and I'm taking Quinion Mitchell with my fifth.
No, it's an exciting thought. And you know what I like about that kid is everyone's like, level of competition in the MAC. I mean, he could have transferred to an SEC school. You know, I like the fact that he was loyal.
Yeah, and he dominated that level of competition, dominated the Senior Bowl, dominated the combine. Like it's one thing if he plays in the MAC and he plays really well, and maybe he has a good couple of seasons there, but then you watch him at Senior Bowl and you go, then you watch him in the combine and the numbers don't match. But he checked all the boxes along the way. So I'm not going to hold the small school against him. Now, some teams will.
Not a small school. That's a pretty big school. They got like 50. They got 10,000 undergrads.
Okay, you know what I mean.
Whole program.
Okay.
Hey, I'm from Ohio.
Are you proud of yourself for doing that?
I am.
Okay. Do you like the way you're living right now?
I do.
This is fine with you? Okay. All right. From a small program, some teams are going to hold it against him. And the Eagles might be one of those teams. I mean, they've been so SEC driven the last few years that maybe they won't be in on Quinion Mitchell.
Yeah, I think his Senior Bowl really answered all those level of competition questions. I mean, he crushed it. It's hard for me to imagine that anybody would still. And look, I mean, he was elite at that level, and then he went to the Senior Bowl, like you said, the combine, and crushed him. So I don't know how. Like, where does it hurt him? Like, how does it possibly hurt him? It's like if you're only average at a MAC school and then you crush the combine and the Senior Bowl, then there's maybe questions. But he was elite in college. He was elite at the Senior Bowl, and he had a great combine. So I don't see. It's hard for you to imagine any team holding his level of competition against them at this point.
Okay,
but fair. It's possible.
Yeah. All right, those are our 5. You ended up with J.C. Latham, Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Chop Robinson, Jared Verse. I ended up with Cooper DeJean, Troy Fatanu, Amarius Mims, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Quinion Mitchell. Any other names that you're like, man, I wish I would have gotten him, or that would have been your next pick?
No, we covered the top of my. I mean, we didn't. Latu's out there.
Latu was the one if I were you, I would have taken him over maybe Chop.
Yeah. I just, like you said, I don't know how they feel about his medicals. Mm-hmm. So that's why I kind of, but I mean, that's a lot. I mean, he had that spinal fusion surgery, and he was medically retired. It's really a crazy story. Do you know what he wanted to do if he couldn't play football anymore?
I do.
That's
Did that
that's
take him off your board?
it took him off my board. I don't even want to say it.
Yeah. Well, now you have to say it.
Well, he wanted to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
So, to me, yeah, that kind of disqualifies him.
But didn't Grant Calcaterra do that in his year off?
Yeah, but you can take a firefighter in the 6th round,
Okay.
but not in the 1st round.
That's fair.
Yeah.
A couple other guys who are on my list that we just didn't get to. Tyler Guyton, who I don't love necessarily from Oklahoma, might be like a trade down and pick him, but he's someone who I think does check some boxes for the Eagles, kind of a developmental tackle. I don't think he's probably going to play guard in the NFL, but has some athleticism upside that I think they would like. Brian Thomas Jr., the receiver,
He was on my list as well.
from LSU, just they've been all in on these like big bodied receivers, and he's really good. I mean, he played across from Malik Neighbors, but he was super productive. 17 touchdowns
Yeah.
last year. It's
16
insane.
catches, 17 touchdowns is nuts.
Yeah.
And
Those
you
are the ones.
go wrong with an LSU receiver. I mean, they have a pretty good track record.
They certainly do. Yeah. So those were the guys. Anyone else I missed?
No, I mean, we covered it. And is there a prize for whoever gets the pick right?
Pride.
That works.
Okay. Do you want a different prize?
No.
Are we gambling on this? Should we
Oh, no,
call
no.
in Isaiah Rodgers?
I don't want to be suspended from Eagle Eye for a year.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to some second round options. You and I both just jotted down a few players because the Eagles do, if they stay at 22, they're going to have picks 50 and 53, really valuable picks in the second round. 53 has been a really valuable pick for them before. Jalen Hurts, Shady McCoy, Miles Sanders, all with the 53rd pick. Want to just go back and forth with some names that you have jotted down?
Sure. You want me to go first?
Yeah, sure.
I'll go Peyton Wilson, NC State. And I mean, the production's off the charts. 15 sacks, 7 interceptions, 13 pass knockdowns, 48 tackles for loss, over 400 tackles. The problem is injuries. I mean, he's a big athletic guy. Injuries, and he's 24. And those are, if he was 22 and healthy, he's a first round pick, easy. Even, but if they're comfortable with his health and, there's another fireman, Danny, you're getting an older guy and it's not ideal. I mean, Howie's talked about how much he loves drafting guys that are, 20, 21. He's 24. So that's a red flag. The injuries are a red flag, but I think he had 2 ACLs and separated shoulder or 2 separated shoulders. But he's talented, and they might say, at 50, let's go for it.
Maybe at 53, not at 50.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's a favorite of our coworker Mike Mulhern.
Is
He's
he?
been doing a lot of draft stuff with us. He loves him. The red flags kind of give me pause there.
Yeah.
Which I think they're going to give a lot of teams pause.
Sure.
I'll give you the linebacker I have on my list is Junior Colson from Michigan. He's my favorite linebacker in the draft. It's funny to talk about him being a bigger linebacker because he's still just like 240 pounds, but he's bigger than all these other guys. And I like that. Now, not a ton of like high level production. Great tackler, doesn't miss tackles, but like no interceptions, no forced fumbles, not many pass breakups. Sometimes that is a little worrisome. Like if he couldn't produce like that in college, can we count on him for big plays in the NFL? I don't know, but I think his profile is one that I really like at linebacker.
Okay. I'm gonna. This one's for you. This is a pick for Dave. I'm assuming they didn't get a corner in the first round. They're going to go corner in the second round. I'm going Max Melton from Rutgers, Cedar Creek High School. Productive kid. I think he had 8 interceptions in college up at Rutgers. And local kid, playmaker. Probably gets overlooked a little because he's at Rutgers, but I think he'd be a nice pick in the middle of that second round.
Good player on my list. Started 40 games in
Yeah.
college. So, like,
Played a
ton of
lot of football.
experience, but he just turned 22. Happy birthday, Max.
Oh, yeah, on Sunday, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Threw a party for him. Uh,
Did you get invited?
no. Super productive, like, he's a little undersized, right? Like, under 6 foot, so maybe his best fit is as a nickel, but he's played outside in college, has decent length for being that short. I looked it up, over 32-inch arms.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the thing you're looking for. Like, if you don't have if you're not super tall on the outside, like, can you make up for it with other things? Like, okay, he has 32 and 1/8 inch arms. He ran a 4.39, so he has some recovery speed. Like, you can probably work with that as an outside corner, but if he ends up being a nickel, like, that's fine too. That's an important position.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, I'll give you another one. I have Andrew Phillips, Drew Phillips from Kentucky. I think goes somewhere in the same range as a Max Melton. Has outside inside versatility. Again, might profile best as a nickel in the NFL, but I like him. I think there's a lot to like about him, and I think he's going to go a tad earlier than some people expect. I think like initial thought was like third round for him, but I think he creeps into the second round and even into the 50s where the Eagles are picking.
Okay. I'm gonna take a tight end here, Jatavion Sanders from Texas. Big dude, really good production. This is assuming they don't take a tight end in the first round. Um, and I think it's a position that they have to start thinking about. So um, I'll tell you what, getting a kid like that in the second round, I think would be a really nice move.
He's like arguably the second best tight end in this class. I don't know if the drop off is huge from him to like a Theo Johnson from Penn State or a kid from Illinois I like a little bit. So I don't know. I don't know if that would be the best use of it, but he's probably going to go in the second round in that range. So
Yeah,
and it is a position where the Eagles probably need to think about a little bit.
it is.
I'm going to go offensive tackle. I'm going to say Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. Uh, I like him. I mean, in most years he's probably a first round pick, but this year is like just so full of offensive line talent that he probably won't be. 21 years old, 6'4", 326. The thing I liked about him, he started at both left tackle and right tackle. So if he comes in and like you can kind of count on him to be a swing guy, he can play on either side. There's no learning how to write with the opposite hand with him. He's done it. Uh, and he has like next level athleticism, right? Like I think he's a good blend of experience, but kind of raw, has the athleticism. Put him with Jeff Stoutland, which is like a recurring theme of these offensive linemen with tools, and you see what you have. I think there's a lot of upside with him too.
I'm going to take a linebacker here, and this might be a little high for him, but kid from Clemson, Jeremiah Trotter. He's small, but very productive, very, very productive kid, and you know he's got to be wired the right way to come here with that name. From everything I've seen, I think he could handle it. Um, Obviously comes from a great family. He was raised the right way. South Jersey kid, even though he didn't play here, or play there. Yeah, I think he's really talented, and again, yeah, it might be a little high for him, but I just thought I'd throw him out there. I think it'd be fun.
It would be fun, probably a little high for him. The problem is he might go in the range where the Eagles don't have a pick. It's a long layoff from 53 to 120
It
in the
is.
fourth
I
round.
think that's most likely,
Mhm.
but
And like, I think there's also a chance he could be there at 120.
I think he'll be gone by then.
Okay.
But there's a chance.
Yeah. I think picking him in the second round kind of compounds a lot of the pressure that you're talking about, right? Like
Probably.
you take him in the fourth round, it's like, okay, if he doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. You take him in the second round, you're basically saying, we think this kid's going to be a starter for us.
Well, I just wanted to sit here and say Eagles are going to draft Jeremiah Trotter.
Okay. I like that.
I haven't had a chance to do that in 26 years.
My next one is Penn State edge rusher Adisa Isaac. played opposite Chop, led the team actually in sacks last year. Good length, and I don't know. I think edge is a position where I'll be honest, it's a little tough to find targets. It's not a very good class. I don't think there's a ton of names out there that really intrigue you in the first few rounds, but he's one that I like. I didn't put him down, but like Gabriel Murphy from UCLA is one that might be in that range we're talking with Trotter, like in between. I would be interested in him. There aren't a lot of names, and I wanted to pick an edge player, so I'll give you a D size.
All right. Well, are we doing more? How many was that?
I don't know. I have a few more on my list, but it's up to you.
Well, I'm going to say there's a couple of receivers who I think, a couple of wide receivers who I think would.
Yeah, I have a couple on my list too. This is good.
Yeah, there's a couple guys. You know what? I have them all kind of together on my list. I'm going to go Keon Coleman, who's got some great size, gets in the end zone. I believe he transferred from Michigan State to Florida State. And just get him in the mix. I think he's a really productive guy. He's got good size, and yeah,
I like that one. Ricky Pearsall.
He's in that group too. Yeah,
from Florida, man, I like him a lot. Had like pretty good production at ASU, and then he goes to Florida. Last year had 965 yards, 65 catches, 4 touchdowns. Athletic profile is great. 6'1", 191. Ran fast, big jumps, played inside and outside at Florida. So, I think he comes in and immediately is wide receiver 3. You kind of throw him in the slot and you let him work, but has the versatility that if you bring in a Devontae or an AJ Brown, you like them inside here and there, which Devontae we've talked about. I think that's an area where they are going to like him, is moving him around the formation a little bit more. Pearsall has the ability to play wherever. So a little older, 23, but a lot of these prospects are older. This is probably the last year for that. You have all the COVID guys. So a lot of prospects are older. I'm okay with that in some cases. And this is a case where I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot less of an issue in the second, third round than in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Anyone else?
I have a few other names, but
I just want to mention one more name.
Sure.
Xavier Legette from South Carolina.
Yep.
Fun player, just massive.
Had 1 year. It's interesting.
Yeah, just 1 year of production, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
Really, did nothing in those early years. And then last year.
Yeah, he played 5 years. His first 4 years, he had 423 yards receiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and last year he had 71 catches, over 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. And he's massive. He's 220 pounds.
Yeah.
And all offseason Eagles have been bringing in these futures guys who are all just massive. Makes me wonder if that's not a type they want.
Yeah, that's certainly a fair assumption, and he fits that bill.
All right, let's take a break. That was fun. On the other side, we'll kind of look at Howie Roseman's draft history. Where does he do well, and where does he do not so well?
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. And we're back here, Rube. That was a fun exercise going through the first and second rounds. Let's talk about Howie a little bit. Been here a long time, which is fun in a way because we have all this data about how he's done. We have trends and sometimes I think we have enough to be dangerous, but also we probably look into things a little bit too much.
Sure.
Let's talk about his successes and failures. I don't know exactly how you want to do this.
Well, I think the thing that strikes me is what he's done, the first half of the first round versus the second half.
Mhm.
And I'll read you his picks in the 20s since he became
Well,
GM.
this is funny. I wanted to tell you this. I broke down his first round picks as hits, misses, and I don't know. I have 5 misses, and 4 of them are in the 20s.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll go through them. And Nelly obviously wasn't his pick; he was 20, but 21 was Rager. 22 was this is the pick number, not the year. Rager was 20. It was 2020. He was the 21st pick. Dillard was 2019. He was the 22nd pick. Fireman Danny was 2011. He was the 23rd pick. And Marcus Smith was 2014. He was the 26th pick. Those are his picks in the 20s. And then Nolan Smith was 30. The jury's still out. Not a great start. Um, but, I mean, who's the best player he's drafted in the 20s? You know, and they're sitting at 22. So, look, it doesn't mean he can't draft a great player at 22, but he hasn't. He never has.
Now, how much of this is just no duh, like the players drafted higher up are going to be better,
Sure.
or and how much of it is like him missing in the 20s?
I think a lot of it is the latter because he's hitting on guys in the second and third and fourth rounds, fifth, sixth, seventh rounds.
Mhm.
So they shouldn't be better than the guy. I mean, he drafted a Hall of Famer in the 6th round the same year. He drafted a complete bust in the 1st round in 2011. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's less risk factor the higher up you are in the round. But let me just go through his picks now he hasn't taken anyone between 15 and 19, but here's his guys in the top 14 picks. And I'll see if I can do this in draft order.
I have them in front of me if you want it.
BG in 2010.
Okay. 10th overall.
BG was 13th, I believe.
Oh, was he?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, he was. One thing I
BG
wrote
was,
down was wrong.
and then Fletch in 2012 was 12th.
Mhm.
Then Lane. I mean, these are great picks. 4th. The guy in Indy, 2nd, and Carson Wentz in 2016. Derek Barnett, look, didn't have a great career here. He was a disappointing player, but he was a functional starting edge rusher for 6.5 years. Played for 6.5 years here. Was he a bust? I wouldn't say he was a bust. Disappointing player.
Yeah.
But then you have Devontae 10th in 21, and then Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter the last 2 years, 13th for Jordan Davis and 9th for Jalen Carter. So jury's still out on Jordan Davis. There's no doubt in my mind Jalen Carter is going to be a stud. I don't know about Jordan Davis. We'll learn a lot this year about who he is. But I mean, the worst pick is in the top half of the 1st round, I guess, is Barnett. And the best pick, who's the best pick in the second half of the 1st round? I mean, you'd have to say, I don't even know. By default, Dillard?
Uh,
I mean, it's like,
yeah, I mean, I don't
it's
know.
an impossible question. I mean, it's not Rager. It's not Fireman Danny. It's not Marcus Smith. It has to be Dillard just by default. I don't even know. I don't even know how to answer that. But it's an incredible disparity. And maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's a statistical quirk. But like you said, we have a decade and a half of data now on how he's drafting. And that's a lot of misses in the 1st round, later in the 1st round, but in the 1st round.
Yeah, and so I think the one thing about all these misses is there are very identifiable process flaws
Sure.
with them that, like, even some at the time we saw, and some have become a little more in focus as the years have gone on. I mean, let's go through them. 2011, Danny Watkins you know, they drafted a 27-year-old fireman.
26, right, when he was drafted.
Sorry, Danny.
And the thing they should have known was that he just didn't have that love for the game. That bothers me even more than the age, I think, although they both bother me.
Well, it was also like, he played tackle at Baylor, and they saw him as a plug and play guard at the NFL. And with his age, like, that was the only way you can talk your way out of the age is that we're going to plug and play this guy.
Yeah.
And when they couldn't do that, it was all over.
Yeah.
So like clearly process flaw there, easy to see. 2014, I mean, we know that process flaw. It was trade down and then panic and draft a guy who, I mean, it's one thing to miss, it's another thing to miss when everyone thinks you missed.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like, and in hindsight, you feel so bad for Marcus Smith. He didn't ask to be drafted 26 overall. He shouldn't have been drafted that high. And it was a bad pick. And it was like a bad pick from the moment they made it. You just knew it was bad.
Yeah. I went back and was reading some of the reaction to that pick 10 years ago this week. And it was universally panned. I mean, we knew that moment they messed up.
Yeah. And then in 2019, Andre Dillard, the story there was they didn't expect him to be there in their range. And then when he was, like, Stoutland loved the profile, he loved the player. They didn't do their homework on Andre Dillard. And maybe it's a little revisionist to think this, but I think there's like the prevailing thought that if they had done their full work on Andre Dillard, they probably wouldn't have liked the personality profile. They would have realized that maybe he doesn't have what it takes to make it in the league as a tackle, and they wouldn't have drafted him. Now, I don't know if that's true. Maybe the athleticism still wins out, and Stout goes, "Get me that guy. I don't care. I can make him a player." But I think there were process flaws in there.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. And I guess out of all these guys, like you ask, like Marcus Smith would have been a bad 5th round pick. Fireman Danny would have been a bad 5th round pick. Rager would have been a okay 5th round pick. I don't know. Dillard would have probably been a good 5th round pick, a decent 5th round pick. He's still in the league.
Sure.
He started some games, but yeah. And we'll look, if they stay at 22, we'll find out if he's learned, if he's learned from these mistakes, but it's a glaring trend to me.
Yeah. And then the Rager one we didn't get into, but
yeah,
we know the issue there. There were, two sides of the building kind of fighting it out. One side won, and they passed up on a pretty good player to
not bad.
Take Jalen Rager. So I think that, like, in a way, it's almost encouraging that you can pinpoint what went wrong with all those picks. No, it's not encouraging that it keeps happening for different reasons. And then, like, the other miss I had was Derek Barnett, which is clearly not to the level of those other ones. And I don't think the process was flawed there. I think they made a pick and he was like an okay player and didn't turn out to be as high level as they were hoping. But, like, I don't kill them for the Derek Barnett pick.
That's fair. Yeah. I thought he was going to be really good.
Yeah, and there were reasons to think that. He was productive in college. It wasn't like he was a nothing athlete. I'll never forget Joe Douglas raving about the ankle flexion.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the process there. Didn't yield the results. The other ones you have problems with because the process was just so flawed.
Yeah, exactly.
A little scary when they're sitting there at 22.
And I wonder if Howie's like, I'm just going to get out of 22. I don't do well there. He knows. I mean, he knows all this stuff, and I mean, I've been around him for 20 years now. I mean, even before he was GM, and I know he thinks that way. He's like, I suck in the 20s. I'm going to get out of there. It wouldn't shock me if that's part of the thought process. Now, look, he's not going to do it just to do it, but all things being equal. And you're getting your odds of hitting any player, whether you trade up or not, at 18 are better than 22 and 14 better than 18. But I just don't think he's going to draft a player at 22.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he trades up. And I think he kind of is itching to trade up.
Well, if he does trade, you saw how his face lit up when he was asked about trades. And he's like, I like trades. It's like, yeah. And right now he's got 100 trades on his desk. I just hope they don't move too far up because we might be stuck in Sixers traffic Thursday night and miss the pick. So
I think we'll get out of there in time.
I hope so.
I hope so too. The draft's exciting.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Any favorite draft stories that stick out to you?
Well, you asked me a couple of weeks ago what the first draft I covered was.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget if you asked me that, like walking around the NovaCare or on the podcast, but it was 1988. And we were in this dungeon at the vet, this small windowless room, because there's only probably maybe 15 people covering the draft back then. It wasn't as big a deal. And the Eagles had a guy at the front of the room. They had this big whiteboard, and they would draft a player, and he'd write the name of the player and the position in the school. We all get our lads guides and our Bushbaum guides and our Kuiper guides and look up the player. Like, you ever heard of Reggie White? But I'll never forget 88, my first draft, in that room. And Peter King comes in, our friend and colleague, former colleague, now retired. Best wishes to Peter. He comes in. This is how different things are now. He comes in.
I like that you say best wishes to Peter. Like, he's sitting there in minute 56 of this, still watching.
He is. He's a loyal watcher. He comes in with a printer. He puts his printer down. He comes back with a fax machine, and he comes back with and I think he had like a hand truck. He was pushing all this. He had like 20 draft guides, and he took up like a quarter of the room with his like command center there. And because he was covering the whole league. So every team they would fax you a bio of the guy. And he sat there getting these faxes, and I thought the Keith Jackson pick was terrible. I mean, he only caught 16 passes his senior year at Oklahoma. And obviously he caught 81 his rookie year, still the record for a rookie tight end in 88. And I think that's when I learned, you don't know anything. Like, you really got to work at this stuff. And, it was, he didn't have a quarterback. They didn't throw the ball, but he had all the traits to be a great receiving tight end. He also averaged like 26 yards a catch in college. So you knew there was something there. I didn't know any of that. So it was a eye-opening experience when you kind of learn how little you really actually know about something.
It's amazing how big of a business the draft has become.
It's incredible. And none of that was the case when I started doing it. I mean, there was a couple draft guides you would order. You'd order them in February after the season, and you'd kind of study them a little bit. But it's become, for a lot of people, the draft's more exciting than the games. It really is.
Sure. Well, no one stinks in the draft. It's all upside and sunshine and rainbows, which is kind of fun.
And if you're wrong about a player, then it's like they just didn't coach him up right.
Yeah, and like, everyone's wrong about players. The people who are paid to do this for a living are wrong about players all the time. You don't think I'm going to be wrong? Right?
So true. Yeah. We have it's going to be a fun weekend. We'll have a podcast each night of the draft.
Yeah, we'll have a ton to talk about, and actual stuff to talk about, which will be fun. Players who will become Eagles.
Like, we found a lot of different ways to say the same thing over and over. But
you're giving away the secret.
We'll both be on. We're doing an hour-long Eagles huddle on Thursday from 5 to 6, I think, and then we're doing a special, or the other way around, a special from 6 to 7.
Yeah,
or the other way around. I don't know. But yeah, so we'll be down there doing that stuff, and then we're gonna fight Sixers traffic and get across the street and see who they pick. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, also want to give a plug to the Takeoff with John Clark podcast. He had Daniel Jeremiah on there. He ran the little one-on-one he had with Howie Roseman last week. So good stuff there from Clarky. Check that out. And if you enjoy our podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button, subscribe there as well. Yes, you in front, sir.
Speaking of Clarky's podcast, he had Shady and Deshaun on the previous week.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, did you have a chance to check any of that out?
I did.
It's amazing. They're hilarious. And I love how Deshaun just after 55 minutes, he's like, John, I got to go. He just leaves. And Shady's like, I still got more stories. But they're really funny. They're doing a podcast of their own. Who isn't? But John, Clarky did a great job getting a lot out of them. It's a lot of fun if you have a chance to watch it.
Yep. You good now?
I'm good. We'll see everyone Thursday night late.
All right. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the first round of the draft. We'll talk to you after. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.